She had always loved the feeling of freedom that came with driving. The soft hum of the engine, the way the steering wheel fit perfectly in her hands, the smooth glide of the tires over the asphalt, it all made her feel alive. Today, that feeling was even stronger because she had achieved something she had worked for tirelessly. Her Lamborghini, a dream she had nurtured for years, was finally hers. It wasn't just a car. It was a symbol of her hard work, her determination, and the obstacles she had overcome. As she parked in front of the busy shopping district, she felt a small sense of pride, mixed with the usual nerves of being in public with such an attention-grabbing car. From a distance, she noticed the usual stares and whispers that seemed to follow her wherever she went with the car. She was used to attention by now, but today it felt different. She felt a hint of tension in the air, a subtle hostility that she couldn't ignore. People were not just curious, they were watching her with a mix of envy and suspicion. She stepped out of the car carefully, holding her bag tightly and scanning the area. She didn't want trouble, but she was prepared to stand her ground if she needed to. As she walked toward the entrance of the shopping area, she noticed a group of people lingering near the curb. They were speaking in low tones, but she could sense the smirks and sneers. Her heart rate increased slightly, not out of fear, but because she had learned over the years that confrontation was often unpredictable. She kept her head high and moved confidently, reminding herself that she had worked too hard to be intimidated by anyone's words. The closer she got, the more obvious their hostility became. The group had now formed a small semicircle, blocking part of the walkway. She could hear snippets of their conversation, mocking her, questioning her success, and making assumptions based on her appearance and the color of her skin. She had encountered prejudice before, but today it felt more personal, more invasive. She paused for a moment, taking a deep breath. She could feel the eyes of bystanders watching as well, some curious, some concerned. She reminded herself that her reaction here would set the tone for everything that followed. One of the bullies stepped forward, a tall man with a sneer that tried to intimidate her. He made a comment about the car, questioning how she could possibly afford it. His tone was mocking, his words laced with disbelief and a hint of envy. She looked at him calmly, meeting his gaze without flinching. She could feel the tension in the air thickening. She knew that reacting angrily would only escalate the situation. Instead, she chose to remain composed, showing them that their attempts to shake her were ineffective. The others in the group began to join in, their voices growing louder and more aggressive. They made jokes, laughed at her expense, and even tried to get closer to the car, making gestures as if to touch it. She could see the small crowd of onlookers starting to gather, some whispering to each other, some pulling out their phones, sensing that something was unfolding. She felt a surge of determination. This was not the moment to back down. She had faced challenges before, from school bullies to workplace discrimination, and she had learned to handle herself with poise and strength. She raised her phone discreetly, starting to record the situation. Her mind worked quickly, assessing the risks and the best way to handle the confrontation. The bullies seemed to notice, some of them pausing, unsure of her intentions. She spoke calmly, her voice clear and steady, telling them that their behavior was unnecessary and that she had done nothing to deserve their hostility. The words were simple, but they carried weight because of the confidence behind them. The tall man, feeling challenged, took a step closer, trying to intimidate her physically. She didn't flinch. Instead, she maintained her position, her eyes steady, her posture firm. She could see that some of the others were starting to hesitate, realizing that she was not an easy target. The small crowd of bystanders seemed to sense the shift in power. Some nodded subtly in her direction, silently acknowledging her courage. She knew that staying calm and composed was her strongest weapon. The bullies continued their verbal attacks, but she didn't respond with anger or fear. Instead, she asked them why they felt the need to bring someone else down. Her words were direct but not aggressive, challenging their motives rather than attacking them personally. The air felt heavy, but she could feel the balance of power slowly shifting. The bystanders' attention seemed to reinforce her presence, making the bullies realize that their behavior was being witnessed and documented. She could feel her heart racing slightly, but it was the kind of adrenaline that sharpened her senses rather than clouded them. She knew that any sudden movements or harsh words could escalate the situation. Instead, she chose patience and observation. She noticed the subtle signs of doubt among the bullies, the quick glances, the brief pauses, the faltering confidence. Her calm demeanor was starting to work against them. As the minutes passed, she continued to speak in a measured, composed voice. She reminded herself of her journey, the long hours, the sacrifices, the challenges she had overcome. She let those thoughts fuel her presence, letting her inner strength radiate outward. The bullies began to sense that she was not intimidated, and that any attempt to provoke her would likely fail. She could feel the shift in the energy around her. The confrontation was still tense, but the balance was changing. A few bystanders started whispering among themselves, some expressing admiration for her courage. She noticed that some people were recording the scene on their own phones, which gave her a sense of reassurance. She was no longer alone in this moment. The presence of others provided a buffer against potential escalation. She remained vigilant, aware that physical threats could emerge, but confident in her ability to handle whatever came next. The bullies tried different tactics, some making snide remarks, others attempting to surround her from different angles. She stayed alert, moving slightly to maintain a safe distance from the car and the group. Her eyes scanned the environment, noting exits, bystanders who could intervene, and the general layout of the area. Every detail mattered. She knew that maintaining composure was crucial, not just for her own safety, but for the impression she was leaving on those watching. Time seemed to stretch as the standoff continued. Her calmness contrasted sharply with the bullies' growing frustration. She could see that their initial confidence was eroding, replaced by irritation and confusion. Her quiet strength was more powerful than their loud hostility. She didn't need to shout or fight. Her presence alone was a statement. Finally, one of the bullies took a step back, muttering under their breath. The shift was subtle, but it was noticeable. The group's dynamic was changing, and the tension began to loosen slightly. She remained cautious, knowing that any sudden movement could reignite aggression, but she also recognized that her calm approach was working. The bullies were beginning to realize that she would not be an easy target. She continued to speak, not in anger but in clarity, reminding them that their time and energy could be better spent on their own goals, rather than trying to diminish someone else's accomplishments. Her words were simple but impactful, resonating not only with the bullies but also with the bystanders who were silently cheering her on. The situation was far from over, but she had already claimed a moral victory by refusing to be intimidated. As she finally made her way toward the shopping area, keeping her phone recording and her eyes on the group, she felt a sense of quiet triumph. She had faced hostility with dignity, her presence and composure acting as her shield. She knew that the confrontation was just beginning in terms of the story that would unfold, but she had started strong. The bullies had been challenged in a way they hadn't expected, and she had demonstrated that courage, intelligence, and self-respect could outmatch aggression and envy. Her mind remained focused, aware that every step, every word, and every glance mattered. She entered the shopping area, her posture steady, her resolve unshaken. The bullies lingered outside, unsure of their next move, while she prepared herself for what was to come. This was more than just an encounter over a car. It was a test of character, of strength, and of dignity. She had faced the first wave with courage and composure, and she knew that the rest of the day would require just as much focus and determination. The Lamborghini behind her gleamed in the sunlight, a symbol not just of wealth but of perseverance, confidence, and the power of standing strong in the face of hostility. The moment she stepped out of the shopping area and returned to her Lamborghini, she realized the bullies had not gone. They lingered near the car, whispering and exchanging looks that were full of mischief and malice. The tension in the air was thicker than before, and she could feel the weight of their eyes as she approached her car. She knew this was the test of patience and strategy. Today was not a day to be reckless. It was a day to be smart, calm, and firm. As she got closer, one of the bullies, a man with a twisted smile, stepped in front of the Lamborghini, pretending to inspect it. He made a loud comment about how someone like her could ever afford such a car, using a tone that was equal parts mockery and disbelief. She looked at him directly, her eyes steady, and shook her head slightly, signaling that she was not impressed or intimidated. Her calm reaction seemed to confuse him, and the others in the group looked around, uncertain how to react to her composed demeanor. Another bully, a woman with brightly dyed hair and an aggressive posture, moved closer to the car. She started tapping on the side panel, making exaggerated gestures as if she was testing the car for scratches. The first man laughed, egging her on, trying to provoke a reaction. She did not react physically but continued to observe, Noting the behavior of the group and how they were feeding off each other's energy, she kept her phone in her hand, ready to record if needed. But she did not point it at them yet, knowing that subtle observation was more powerful. The bullies began shouting now, louder and more aggressive. They made comments about her race and her gender, trying to push her buttons. They assumed that her confidence would crack under pressure. She could feel the tension rising around her, and the few bystanders who had remained nearby were watching with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Some had taken out their phones, but none had intervened yet. She reminded herself to stay calm, to keep her voice steady, and to control the situation without letting anger dictate her actions. She spoke slowly and deliberately, addressing the group as a whole. She asked why they felt the need to belittle someone else's accomplishments. Her voice was calm, almost soft, but it carried authority. She could see some of the bullies faltering slightly, unsure how to respond. Her words were not loud or aggressive, yet they seemed to hit a nerve. The man with the twisted smile sneered, but his eyes showed a flicker of uncertainty. She could tell that her approach was affecting them more than she had hoped. One of the bullies made a sudden move, pretending to scratch the car, but she stepped closer, maintaining a safe distance, and calmly told them to stop. Her words were firm but not threatening. The group hesitated, unsure if they had crossed a line they could not come back from. Her composure created an invisible boundary that they could not easily penetrate. The small crowd of bystanders seemed to sense this as well, and some nodded in her direction, silently supporting her courage. The bullies grew frustrated. Their laughter became sharper, their gestures more exaggerated. They tried to provoke her verbally, using insults and challenges, but she remained steady. She kept her posture upright, her eyes on each person as she spoke in short, deliberate sentences. She did not shout. She did not threaten. Her calmness itself was a challenge to their aggression, and she could see that some of them were struggling to maintain their bravado. The man with the twisted smile tried a different tactic. He stepped closer, leaning slightly towards her, and made a comment meant to intimidate.
She did not flinch.
Instead, she leaned back slightly, maintaining balance and poise. She spoke quietly, almost conversationally, but her words cut through the noise. She reminded them that they were wasting their energy on negativity instead of focusing on their own growth. Her tone was firm but not cruel. It was a challenge to their mindset, rather than an attack on their person. She could see that the man was taken aback, and the others were starting to lose confidence in their attempt to control the situation. The woman with the dyed hair started pacing, growing more agitated. She made loud gestures toward the car, daring her to react. She stood her ground, her phone still in her hand, watching and recording the scene in her mind. She knew every action counted. She remained aware of bystanders, potential witnesses, and the general environment. Her strategy was simple: remain calm, assert boundaries, and let the bully's own behavior reveal their weakness. One of the bystanders, a young man who had been watching from a distance, stepped a little closer. He did not intervene physically, but whispered encouragements to her, and she gave a small nod of acknowledgement. She drew strength from the silent support around her. The bullies noticed the subtle presence of witnesses and grew more frustrated. Their energy, once focused on intimidation, was now divided between confronting her and dealing with the awareness that they were being observed. She spoke again, this time addressing the man directly, asking him how he felt about targeting someone simply because of envy or prejudice. Her tone was calm, almost curious, as if inviting him to reflect rather than lash out. The man stammered slightly, caught off guard by her direct approach. The others in the group looked at each other, sensing that their plan to dominate and humiliate her was unraveling. Her composure and intelligence had become the stronger force in the interaction. The woman with dyed hair attempted one last verbal attack, making a harsh comment meant to provoke anger. She remained calm, shook her head gently, and reminded them again that such behavior reflected more on them than on her. Her words were simple but effective. The energy around the group began to shift noticeably. The bystanders whispered among themselves, some expressing admiration for her ability to handle the situation with dignity. She could feel the tension in the air starting to loosen, even if slightly. At that moment, the man with the twisted smile made a subtle retreat, stepping back and muttering under his breath. The group's dynamic had changed. They were no longer in full control. The power had shifted to her simply through her confidence, calm demeanor, and refusal to be provoked. She felt a small sense of triumph but did not let it distract her. She remained aware, alert to any sudden moves or unexpected escalation. Every second counted. The woman with dyed hair eventually stepped back as well, realizing that her aggressive behavior was not achieving the desired effect. The other members of the group followed suit, hesitating and looking uncertain. She maintained her stance, her eyes steady, her body language calm yet firm. She had created an invisible boundary that the bullies were unable to cross. The crowd of bystanders watched silently, some recording, some simply observing, all acknowledging her quiet strength. She spoke once more, addressing the group collectively, reminding them that respect and self-control were far more powerful than anger and aggression. Her words were simple but resonated with authority and experience. She emphasized that everyone had their own journey, and that tearing others down only reflected insecurity. The bullies, now visibly deflated, exchanged uncertain glances, unsure how to respond. Her calm and measured response had disrupted their plan, leaving them flustered and ineffective. Finally, after several tense minutes, the group began to disperse. The woman with dyed hair and the man with the twisted smile lingered for a moment, glancing at her with a mixture of frustration and disbelief, but they eventually walked away. She remained by her Lamborghini, phone still in hand, making sure the situation had fully de-escalated. She took a deep breath, feeling a mix of relief and pride. She had faced hostility with intelligence and courage without resorting to aggression or fear. As the crowd of bystanders began to scatter, she knew that this encounter was only a part of the larger story. She had successfully defended herself and her space, asserting dignity and control. The Lamborghini gleamed in the sunlight, a silent witness to the confrontation. She reflected on the events calmly, realizing that her composure had not only protected her physically, but had also demonstrated moral strength. Her handling of the situation had sent a clear message. Courage, intelligence, and calmness were far more powerful than hostility and envy. She carefully got into the Lamborghini, keeping an eye on the area as she started the engine. The hum of the car was comforting, a reminder of the freedom and independence she had fought for. She drove slowly through the parking area, observing the reactions of people around her. Some offered nods of respect, others whispered admiration, and a few simply stared in awe. She felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that she had turned a potentially hostile situation into a display of strength and self-respect. The day was far from over, but she had faced the immediate challenge successfully. The encounter had tested her patience, judgment, and courage. She had proven to herself and to others that confidence and dignity could outmatch aggression and intimidation. She drove away slowly, reflecting on the lessons of the encounter and preparing herself mentally for whatever challenges lay ahead. The Lamborghini behind her was more than a car. It was a symbol of her perseverance, intelligence, and the unshakable strength she carried within herself. The moment she drove away from the initial confrontation, she didn't feel relief. Instead, she felt a surge of focus and determination. She knew the bullies were still nearby, their anger and envy simmering, and she understood that the encounter wasn't over yet. Her mind raced through scenarios and strategies, each carefully weighed to maintain her safety while asserting her presence. She had learned over the years that confidence and composure could be far more effective than aggression. And today she would put that to the test. She parked a short distance away in a quieter area, observing the bullies from a safe distance. They were regrouping, whispering among themselves, clearly frustrated that their initial attempt to intimidate her had failed. She could see the confusion and hesitation in their body language. Their aggression had not disappeared, but it had been weakened by her calmness and self-assurance. She stepped out of the car, her phone still in her hand, recording selectively, not to provoke them, but to document the situation if needed. She approached the group slowly, making sure to maintain a safe distance and addressed them calmly. Her voice was steady, her tone neutral but assertive. She reminded them that their actions were unnecessary, and that their time and energy could be better spent on their own growth and goals. Her words were simple, yet they carried weight because of the confidence and composure behind them. She wasn't attacking. She was challenging their mindset. That distinction mattered, and it seemed to resonate with some of them. The man with the twisted smile tried to regain control, stepping closer with a mocking expression. She did not flinch. Instead, she looked directly at him and asked a simple question. Why did he feel the need to belittle someone else? Her question was calm, almost conversational, but it carried an edge of authority that made him pause. She could see that the others were watching closely, some shifting uneasily as they realized that her confidence had not wavered. The energy of the confrontation was changing, and she could feel it. The woman with the dyed hair, clearly frustrated, attempted another aggressive gesture, moving toward the Lamborghini as if to make a show of dominance. She remained steady, raising her hand slightly, not in aggression but in a subtle signal to stop. Her calmness contrasted sharply with their hostility. The difference was striking, and even the bystanders who had followed the scene began to whisper among themselves, some offering silent support. She could feel the shift in power. It was now less about intimidation and more about presence and authority. She spoke again, this time addressing the group collectively. She reminded them that actions motivated by envy or prejudice only reflected their own insecurities. Her words were measured, deliberate, and confident. The bullies hesitated, unsure how to respond to a person who remained so unshaken in the face of aggression. She continued, emphasizing that she had worked hard for her success, that every obstacle she had faced had required resilience, patience, and determination. She was not bragging. She was stating facts, and the clarity of her words made it impossible for them to dismiss her without revealing their ignorance. One of the bullies, a young man at the edge of the group, tried to make a joke, attempting to lighten the tension while maintaining a sense of dominance. She responded calmly, acknowledging his words without anger or fear, and reminded them that humor at someone else's expense only showed a lack of maturity. Her response was simple yet powerful, highlighting the difference between confidence and insecurity. The man faltered slightly, realizing that his attempt to provoke her had failed. The air was heavy with tension, but she maintained a steady rhythm, speaking slowly and clearly. She asked questions instead of making accusations, allowing the bullies to reflect rather than react. Her words were carefully chosen to challenge their mindset while maintaining her own composure. She could see the subtle signs of hesitation, glances at each other, nervous laughter, and faltering gestures. Her calm authority was gradually breaking down their aggression. She stepped a little closer to the car, maintaining a safe distance from the group, and addressed the man with the twisted smile directly. She reminded him that life was about growth, effort, and resilience, not tearing others down. Her tone was calm but firm, each word deliberate. The man's expression changed subtly. For the first time, he seemed to realize that his attempts at intimidation were ineffective. The others in the group were watching closely, sensing the change in dynamics. Her confidence had shifted the energy, leaving them uncertain and frustrated. The woman with dyed hair tried one last verbal attack, raising her voice and using harsh words to provoke a reaction. She did not respond with anger. Instead, she shook her head gently and spoke clearly about the power of self-respect, composure, and dignity. Her words were simple, yet they resonated with authority. The group began to retreat slightly, their energy depleted by the inability to provoke her. She had turned the confrontation into a lesson in strength and calmness. The bystanders who had gathered began to whisper among themselves, some expressing admiration for her courage, some nodding in acknowledgement of her composure. She could feel the subtle support around her, reinforcing her presence. The bullies, now visibly deflated, exchanged uncertain glances. Their aggression had lost its impact, replaced by frustration and confusion. She remained vigilant, aware that any sudden move could reignite tension, but confident that her calmness and strategic approach had shifted the balance. She continued to speak, addressing the group with clear and simple statements. She reminded them that respect and self-control were more powerful than anger and aggression. Her words were not loud or threatening, but they carried a weight that made the bullies hesitate. She emphasized that everyone had their own journey and challenges, and that trying to diminish someone else only reflected insecurity. The effect was noticeable. The bullies' postures softened, their movements slowed, and their confidence wavered. After several tense minutes, the group began to disperse. The man with the twisted smile muttered under his breath and walked away, followed by the woman with dyed hair and the others. She remained by the Lamborghini, phone still in hand, ensuring the situation had fully de-escalated. She took a deep breath, feeling a sense of quiet triumph. She had faced hostility without anger or fear, asserting her dignity and strength through calmness and intelligence. She reflected on the encounter as she approached her car. The adrenaline from the confrontation began to settle, replaced by a quiet sense of satisfaction. She had turned aggression into an opportunity to demonstrate courage and composure. Her strategy had worked. She had defended herself without escalating the situation, and she had sent a clear message that intimidation and hostility were powerless against calm authority. As she drove slowly through the area, she noticed the reactions of bystanders. Some whispered admiration, others nodded subtly, and a few took out their phones to record or share the story. She felt a surge of quiet pride, knowing that her actions had not only protected her but had also left an impression on those who witnessed it. She had demonstrated that strength was not just about physical presence or loud words. It was about confidence, composure, and self-respect. She continued to drive, reflecting on the lessons of the encounter. Every step, every word, and every gesture had mattered. She had maintained control, protected her space, and asserted her dignity. The Lamborghini, gleaming in the sunlight, served as a reminder of her hard work and determination. The confrontation had tested her patience, strategy, and courage, and she had emerged stronger and more confident. The day was far from over, but she felt prepared for whatever challenges might come next. She had proven to herself that calmness, intelligence, and presence could overcome hostility and envy. She knew that the story of this encounter would continue to unfold, but she had already claimed a moral victory. She drove on, focused, aware, and confident, ready to face the next chapter with the same poise and strength that had carried her through this one. After the confrontation with the bullies, she felt a mixture of relief and purpose. She had faced aggression with calmness and intelligence, but the story was far from over. Her phone, which had been recording parts of the encounter, now held evidence not only of the bullies' actions but also of her ability to handle the situation with dignity. She realized that sharing her experience could inspire others and shed light on the power of composure in the face of hostility. With that in mind, she carefully reviewed the footage, making sure it captured the essence of what had happened. The moment she uploaded the video online, she began to see responses almost immediately. Comments poured in from people who admired her courage and poise. Many expressed that they had faced similar situations but did not know how to respond. Others praised her for standing her ground without resorting to anger or violence. The support she received was overwhelming and heartening. She realized that her experience could reach beyond the local community, offering a lesson in self-respect, patience, and resilience to a much wider audience. As the day went on, she continued her errands but remained conscious of the attention she was now receiving. People recognized her from the video, some nodding in respect, others approaching cautiously to express their admiration. She interacted politely, thanking them for their support but staying focused on her own activities. The incident had become more than just a confrontation over a car. It was now a message about strength, dignity, and perseverance. Meanwhile, the bullies were facing consequences of their own. The video she had shared quickly circulated, and others who witnessed the event began posting their own accounts. Their actions, once meant to intimidate and provoke, were now exposed to public scrutiny. Many expressed disappointment in their behavior, and some even reached out to criticize them directly online. The bullies were forced to confront the fact that their hostility had backfired, leaving them embarrassed and exposed. She had turned a negative situation into a lesson not just for herself but for them as well. Throughout the day, she reflected on her journey to this point. She thought about the years of hard work, the challenges she had overcome, and the dedication that allowed her to achieve her dreams. The Lamborghini was more than a vehicle. It symbolized the results of perseverance, discipline, and focus. It was a reminder that success is often met with scrutiny and envy, but those who remain confident and composed can navigate such situations with grace and dignity. She began receiving messages from people inspired by her courage. Many shared personal stories of facing adversity, bullying, or prejudice, expressing how her example encouraged them to stand strong. She responded to some, offering words of encouragement and advice on handling hostility. The impact of her actions extended far beyond the initial confrontation. She realized that by staying calm and composed, she had turned a potentially harmful encounter into a source of inspiration for others. The incident also sparked conversations online about bullying, racism, and the importance of self-respect. Articles and social media posts highlighted her story, emphasizing the power of composure and dignity in the face of hostility. She felt proud that her experience could contribute to a broader discussion about respect, empathy, and perseverance. Her actions had become a lesson, proving that confidence and integrity are stronger than aggression and envy. She reflected on the subtle shifts in the bullies' behavior that day. Their initial confidence and aggression had been undone by her calm demeanor and assertiveness. By refusing to react with anger, by speaking clearly and confidently, she had turned the situation around. She understood that power is not always physical. Sometimes it is the quiet authority of someone who refuses to be intimidated that carries the greatest impact. As the evening approached, she returned home, still thinking about the day's events. She felt a sense of accomplishment not just for what she had done, but for how she had done it. She had faced hostility, remained composed, and demonstrated strength through intelligence and self-respect. She knew that the lesson of the day would stay with her, and she hoped that it would resonate with those who had watched her story unfold. The next morning, the story had gained even more attention online. News outlets and social media pages were sharing her experience, praising her for her courage and dignity. People from different cities and countries reached out to commend her, and some even shared their own stories of overcoming adversity. She felt a deep sense of connection to a wider community, realizing that her actions had sparked conversations about strength, resilience, and respect. The Lamborghini had become a symbol, but her response to the situation was what truly mattered. She continued to think about ways to use her experience positively. She considered sharing tips on handling bullying, promoting self-confidence, and encouraging people to face hostility with dignity. She realized that her story could be used as a tool for teaching and inspiring others, turning a personal encounter into a collective lesson. Her mind was full of ideas on how to spread this message effectively, reaching as many people as possible. Over the following days, she continued to receive messages of support and admiration. People expressed that her courage had given them the confidence to face their own challenges. She felt proud knowing that her calm and composed response had not only protected her, but had also made a positive impact on others. The encounter, which could have been a source of fear or negativity, had transformed into an opportunity to inspire, educate, and uplift. She reflected on the importance of self-awareness, composure, and intelligence in handling challenging situations. The bully's aggression had tested her, but by remaining calm and confident, she had demonstrated the true meaning of strength. She realized that this experience would stay with her, guiding her in future encounters and serving as a reminder that dignity and self-respect are powerful tools. Her story also prompted discussions about societal attitudes, envy, and the challenges faced by people who achieve success in the face of prejudice. Her experience became a case study in resilience, showing how confidence, composure, and self-respect can overcome hostility and intimidation. She felt proud that her actions could contribute to a wider understanding of these issues and inspire others to respond to adversity with grace. The Lamborghini, parked in her garage, was more than just a car now. It was a symbol of her perseverance, her achievements, and the challenges she had overcome. It reminded her that success often attracts scrutiny, envy, and hostility. But those who remain confident and composed can navigate such challenges effectively. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that her story had reached and inspired many. She continued to share her experience with friends, family, and the wider community, emphasizing the importance of dignity, calmness, and self-respect. She encouraged others to face hostility with intelligence and composure, showing that strength is not always loud or aggressive. Her story became a source of inspiration, demonstrating that courage and confidence can transform negative situations into opportunities for growth and influence. As the days passed, she noticed a change in how people interacted with her. The respect and admiration she received were not just for her car or success, but for the way she handled a difficult situation. She realized that her actions had left a lasting impression, proving that courage, composure, and integrity can have a powerful impact. The encounter with the bullies had become a defining moment, shaping her story and inspiring others to face challenges with dignity and confidence. Days after the incident, she realized that her experience had transformed from a personal encounter into something much larger. People continued to share her video, discuss her calm and composed response, and celebrate her courage. She received messages from strangers thanking her for showing how to stand strong in the face of hostility. Many shared their own stories of bullying, envy, or prejudice, and they found hope in her ability to handle such a tense situation without anger or fear. She began to understand that her actions had a ripple effect far beyond what she had imagined. She decided to use the experience as a platform to advocate for self-respect and resilience. She began writing short posts and creating content that encouraged others to face hostility with composure and intelligence. Her message was simple but powerful. Confidence, dignity, and calmness are far more effective than aggression or retaliation. She emphasized that anyone could face hostility, and that success or achievements might attract attention or envy, but the key was in how one responded. Her story resonated with many, and her online presence grew as a result. People began to reach out to her for advice. Young women, in particular, expressed that her example gave them courage to face their own challenges. They asked how she managed to stay calm, how she maintained confidence in difficult moments, and how she dealt with the fear of confrontation. She responded thoughtfully, sharing her experiences, the lessons she had learned, and strategies for remaining composed under pressure. She encouraged others to remember that strength comes from within, and that every challenge was an opportunity to demonstrate character and resilience. Meanwhile, the bullies from the incident faced ongoing public scrutiny. Their actions had been documented and shared widely, and many people expressed disappointment in their behavior. Some of them received criticism from their own social circles, and the humiliation of having their aggression exposed left them reconsidering their actions. She didn't celebrate their discomfort, but she recognized that their exposure highlighted the power of handling hostility with intelligence and calmness. By choosing composure, she had turned their aggression into a lesson in accountability. Over time, she reflected more deeply on the meaning of the encounter. The Lamborghini, once just a symbol of success, had become a symbol of resilience and dignity. Every time she drove it, she remembered how she had handled a tense situation without losing composure. She realized that material success was temporary, but the strength of character she had shown would endure. The story was no longer about envy or confrontation. It was about courage, self-respect, and the ability to rise above negativity. She began to receive invitations to speak at events and engage in conversations about overcoming bullying and prejudice. Organizations and communities wanted her to share her story and the lessons she had learned. She accepted some invitations, using them as opportunities to empower others. Her calm, clear, and relatable storytelling made her message accessible to many. She spoke about the importance of confidence, awareness, and maintaining dignity, even in moments of challenge. Her experience had become a tool for teaching resilience and inspiring positive change. Her family and friends were proud of how she handled the situation. They had always admired her strength, but seeing her navigate such hostility with poise and intelligence reinforced their respect for her. They supported her decision to share her story, to use it as a platform for advocacy and education. Their encouragement gave her additional confidence, helping her realize that her experience could influence not only her immediate community, but also people far beyond her city. In her personal reflection, she acknowledged the fear and tension she had felt during the encounter. She recognized that fear is natural when facing hostility, but she also realized that it could be managed with awareness and composure. She had practiced staying calm, thinking clearly, and responding intelligently rather than reacting impulsively. This mindset had allowed her to maintain control over the situation and turn a potentially negative encounter into a positive story of resilience. The story began to inspire more than just individuals. It sparked discussions in schools, workplaces, and online communities about handling bullying, envy, and aggression. People shared her example as a way to teach conflict resolution, empathy, and self-confidence. She saw that her experience could be a lesson for generations, showing that strength is not measured by aggression, but by composure, dignity, and intelligence. She felt proud knowing that her story had created a positive impact beyond what she had imagined. As her influence grew, she continued to focus on her own goals and ambitions. She did not let the incident define her day-to-day life, but she embraced the opportunity to use her story for good. She maintained her routine, worked on her businesses, and engaged with her community, all while integrating the lessons of resilience, courage, and dignity she had learned. The Lamborghini remained a symbol of her perseverance, but her actions were now the true representation of her strength. She noticed that the people who had once doubted or criticized her success began to change their tone when they encountered her. Her calm confidence and reputation had a subtle effect, showing that intimidation and hostility were not effective against someone who remained composed. She did not seek to confront or shame anyone. She simply let her presence, confidence, and intelligence speak for themselves. The power of her composure became apparent to those around her, reinforcing the lessons she wanted to share. Through this experience, she also learned the importance of community and support. The bystanders who had silently observed her during the initial confrontation, the people who shared her story online, and those who reached out to offer encouragement, all played a role in reinforcing her confidence. She realized that facing hostility is challenging, but the support of others and the willingness to act with integrity can create a strong foundation for resilience. She was grateful for the connections that strengthened her message and her sense of empowerment. As time went on, the encounter became a defining chapter in her life story. She continued to drive her Lamborghini, not as a display of wealth, but as a reminder of her journey, her perseverance, and her ability to handle adversity with grace. She used the experience to mentor others, sharing insights on confidence, self-respect, and navigating envy or aggression. She wanted people to understand that every challenge can be transformed into an opportunity to demonstrate strength and inspire others. Her story eventually reached wider audiences, inspiring people across different cities and communities. Articles, social media posts, and interviews highlighted not only her success, but also the way she handled hostility with calmness and intelligence. She received countless messages from people expressing gratitude for her example, saying that her courage had given them the strength to face their own challenges. She realized that her response to the bullies had become a beacon of hope and resilience for many. In the end, she understood that true success is not only measured by achievements or possessions, but by character, composure, and the ability to rise above negativity. She had faced hostility, remained calm, and turned a tense situation into a powerful story of resilience and dignity. The Lamborghini was a symbol of her hard work, but her actions and the lessons she shared were far more meaningful. She had created a legacy of courage, self-respect, and empowerment that would continue to inspire others for years to come. She reflected on the entire experience with a sense of gratitude and growth. She had faced fear, hostility, and envy, yet emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident. Her journey had become more than a personal victory. It had become a story that could uplift, inspire, and educate. She knew that the challenges of life would continue, but she was prepared to face them with the same composure, intelligence, and courage that had guided her through this defining moment. With every drive, every interaction, and every story she shared, she continued to embody strength, dignity, and resilience, leaving an enduring impact on everyone who witnessed her journey.